Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Mustang Mowers. What we've got here is a 2011 Bad Boy CZT. Customer request, oil change, sharpen the blades, just giving an all-around check over. So this finally gives me the opportunity to do a decent blade video for you. So if you give me just a few minutes, I'll get you underneath the mower with me and show you how we take the blades off and kind of things we look for once we're down there. Just give me just a second. All right guys, so now that we're down underneath here, so this up here is the front of the mower. So some of the things that we look for while we're underneath here is to see how much stuff is caked up underneath this deck. So like this here is just grass that's hardened, if you will, and just caked itself up here. It's actually not that bad. I've seen a lot worse. Once we get back in here to put the blades back on, we'll get all this scraped out of here and cleaned, because and I'll talk about this once I get over to the bench to sharpen these blades. But so the blade itself has a couple of different parts on it. So you've got your cutting edge here and then your lifter back here. Well, the lifter is designed to lift the grass up so that this cutting edge can actually cut it. Well, the lifter acts almost like a vacuum, if you will, underneath here, because you've got this baffling that runs around each one of these blades in here. So this baffling is very important to that lifting process for these blades. So the lifter lifts the grass up, the cutting edge cuts it, and then it transfers it all the way through here and then out the chute on the side. So the things that we look for once we get underneath here is A, how much stuff is caked up underneath here, and is there anything wrapped around these spindles? So you've got a little bit of what appears to be probably baling twine, which is not uncommon. Anything that you pick up like that is going to get wrapped up inside these spindles. Now, what you've got to be careful of is if you get too much of this stuff wrapped up in these spindles, you'll start to burn these spindles up. These Bad Boy spindles, and I think most on the market are, but specifically talking about Bad Boys, these spindles are rebuildable. There's bearings inside this housing that you can pull this bolt out here, drop the blade, and then on the top side you take the pulley off and then take the collar off, and this shaft will come right out the center. And there's a blade in the or a bearing in the bottom and a bearing in the top, and there's a spacer in between them. So if you guys are starting to hear a noise when you kick the blades on, it very well may be that you've got a bearing going bad inside the spindle. And if you catch it quick enough, it's much cheaper to rebuild these spindles with new parts than it is to buy a whole new spindle. Significantly cheaper to rebuild it than it is to buy all new. So if you guys hear that, get it to a shop, get it checked out so that they can see if the bearings need to be replaced, because if so, that's going to extend the life of your spindle, save you money in the long run. So I'm going to try to get my camera set up to where you can see. We're going to be using a 1/2-inch impact with a 15/16 socket, because that's the size bolt that's on the bottom of this. So once I get these blades pulled off, then I'll take them over to the bench vise and show you how we sharpen them. Alright guys, I apologize, but that's about as good as I can get it without the camera falling over. So give me just a second, we'll get these blades off. Looks like this one I'm going to need a different socket for. Yep. Alright guys, let's get over to the vise and I'll show you how we sharpen them. Alright guys, so what we do when we look for a few things before we decide whether or not we're going to sharpen a blade or not. So one of those things that we look for is this lifter, to see how thick the material is here along this lifter, because as the blade cuts the grass, it comes up this lifter, and this right here will wear down. This is probably the most wearable part of any blade. So that's the first thing that we look for, to see if that lifter is worn down. Now this one is actually in pretty decent shape, but I'll show you here, this one is not. So this one is worn almost all the way through and about to break off. Now keep in mind, these bad boy blades at the tip spin at about 18,000 RPMs at wide open throttle. So you can imagine what one of these little pieces of metal would do as it comes off the end of this blade. So keep in mind, these are things that you as an owner need to look for and inspect pretty regularly, because this stuff happens quite often. Now, if you notice, this blade here is worn back right there. That's because the last 3 or 4 inches of the blade are the only part of the blade that really do any cutting. So this is still relatively close to the original profile of the blade. This would be a sharpenable blade if it weren't for this lifter. Now it doesn't have a whole lot of meat left on it, but if it wasn't for this lifter, we could sharpen this and run it just a little bit longer. So what you're going to see me do, and I will try to explain this before I do anything, because I don't know how much you're going to be able to hear me when I have this grinder going. So we'll take our grinder with an abrasive wheel on it, and this blade is cut to a very specific bevel from the factory. So this is a 30-degree angle, roughly. I think it's 28 is the actual angle, but roughly a 30-degree angle. So what you're going to see me do is I'm going to take this grinder and I'm going to touch real lightly with it on to try to find that sweet spot. And once I do, I'm going to hold that and drag it all the way down the length of this blade to try to make this profile look just like this profile. Okay, so once we do that, then that blade has come back down to a cutting edge. So give me just a second and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright guys, let's get this thing sharpened up. Now, anytime you're messing around with equipment like this, obviously sparks are going to be flying off the end of this wheel as it's taking material off of this blade. Always, always, always wear proper protective equipment. I have a cousin who's an eye doctor who would be angry with me if I told you, or if I didn't tell you, you have to wear safety glasses, okay? Wear your safety glasses, protect yourself, okay? Alright, after we cut this new profile on this blade, you can kind of see there's still some grind marks in it, and it's got some draggy areas in it. So what we do is we'll take an angle grinder with an abrasive wheel on it, and we'll go over this profile again, and it kind of polishes that up and smooths it out, because it will hold the edge longer than if you don't do that. Okay, so then we'll come through, flip this blade over, and we'll take our grinder and run along the bottom side of this cutting edge just to make sure that there aren't any little deals hanging down. Just smooth it up a little bit. So gives you that profile, be able to cut grass. Looks a whole lot different than that one there. Just give me just a second, I'll get this one done. Alright, so, and you can see, I don't know how well you can see it or not, but there's a little nick in this blade right here. That's not really going to cause all that much trouble. You could remove enough of this material to get that nick out of there. The problem is you're going to have to remove it off that other end as well, because this blade has to remain balanced. Okay, so because if not, it will start to waller out the bearings in that spindle that we just talked about a minute ago. So you could remove this material down enough to get that nick out of there, but you'd have to remove that same amount of material off the other side, and you're losing an awful lot of cutting edge on this end of the blade by removing that much material. So that nick there, you'll never notice it in your cut, so that's how we would sharpen a blade. So give me just a second to get the other two blades sharpened, and then we'll get them put back on the mower. Alright guys, thank you for taking the time to watch the video. If you enjoyed the content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can visit us on Facebook at Mustang Mowers LLC. You can visit us online at mustangmowersoolaga.com. Give us a call at the shop. It's 918-443-9393, or come by and say hi. Thanks guys.